Good afternoon, Tim.
Hi,
Hello, you finally made it to Plymouth. Bit of a
Yes.
long journey, but we're not going to go into that too much.
Good.
Okay. Well, Tim Rogers has come to join us today to tell us about what he's discovered is going on in South Wales, and in particular around his village community, Rwdri, which is South Wales, fairly close to Newport. Where else is near to you?
It's sort of the suburbs of Cardiff and Newport.
Okay, we'll just bring a slide up here. We've got a little bit of a map, and we can highlight Rwdri, excuse me, because it's a little place. You've been with us on an interview before, but this is the first time you've been in the studio. So just very briefly, how long have you been living there? And
All right, well, I've been in Rwdri for about 14 years, Brian, and I've had a group of people terrorising me and my family. Constant aggravation, and what I've found is they're using other people to do their bidding. So they're getting into groups and they're spreading lies about me and my family. It's got that bad that my son was hospitalised
right,
because of the lies twice.
Okay. We're going to be talking about that, and we're also going to be talking about what's happening in particular with school children, and it's the subject of suicide. Very, very serious subject of great concern, obviously, to every parent, really. And you were keen that we actually just highlighted this, which I'm going to do, so that people are absolutely, there's no ifs or buts. They know exactly the seriousness of what we're talking about. So you can look up this link yourself, but essentially it's a criminal offence for a person to actually encourage suicide, and that actually holds a 14-year potential prison sentence. So what we are going to delve into this afternoon, some of it I've no doubt that viewers and listeners will think is unbelievable, but we are going to put evidence up on screen. And the whole way through, this is the tremendous work that you've been doing, helped by other individuals and a lady in Cornwall.
Yes, that's right. I mean, because they've been targeting me for so long, I decided to look at their backgrounds and look at exactly what they're doing from this hall. And they're using techniques to empower themselves and also at the same time to deflect what's really going on. So we're looking at this image now in front of the screen, which is pretty disgusting. That there is actually known as an assaulted self-image.
Where did you see this image? Just give us a little bit of context. Where did you
One image was very close to the children's playing area. That one had a fly on the forehead. And the other one was right outside the parish hall.
Right. So we've blown it up here. The key point about this poster is, of course, that this isn't graffiti that, excuse me, somebody's done on the poster. It's actually part of the poster image itself, that the boy's face is graffitied out. And tell us again what the significance of that is.
Right. If you look at the psychology behind it, what we're looking at is the Schneidman's failings. There's 5 specific primers that in relation to suicide. And one of them is an assaulted self-image. Now, if you look at that image, that is absolutely deliberate. It's disgusting. If you look at it, if you walk past her and looked at it, you'd think, that's a bit odd. But you wouldn't take much notice of it.
Because you don't go into the psychology deep enough.
No, because you'd never ever think from a facility like this that anything sinister would be going on. Apparently, we've got a system which checks people's history and so on for child abuse. But this isn't sexual child abuse, this is psychological child abuse. Right. So if you have a look at the image, if we can just scroll down.
I can just come back again on this one here.
Yeah. So we've got a chalk or blade in his hand. He's got a scribbled out face. He's scribbled out his own face. I think anybody would agree with that. Maybe it's a bit of speculation. But you look further down then and he's wet himself.
Yeah, we can't see this with the quality of the image we can put up, but on the poster you've pointed this out to us before, that the boy's actually wet himself.
Yeah. So it was only because of the persistent bullying from these people against me and my family, my private interests and everything else. I had no choice. I had to understand who they were. To defend myself, because what was going on was absolutely abnormal. We had people spitting us spitting at us in the street. We had people abusing us, people who wanted to fight me. I was very, very angry at one point.
And you've had anti-Semitic material written on your gates?
Very upsetting, Brian. I'm half Jewish, and I said, Jewish scum out.
Right. So, yeah, this is where the whole psychology of what's going on gets very interesting. So we'll just show that image again so that you know what we're talking about here. But it's a poster for a play, and we're going to now move on to another shot from this play in the hall, which I think will surprise people.
All right.
Tell us a bit about this one. What can you see in this?
Let me just say as well, if you're looking for a serial killer, we've all seen the films, Sherlock and Holmes and all the rest of it. We're looking for something that identifies or similarity between the crimes. So every image and every play that I'm seeing, that's got the same themes: suicide, self-harming, assaulted self-images.
Yeah.
And the children are all of the same age. They're all about 15, 16 years of age.
So what can we see in this picture here? So
that image there is disturbing, to say the least. We've got a child about 15 years of age. He's got blood coming out of his mouth. He's got a reef above his head, and above that is a symbol of Moloch, the child sacrifice god. And what's even more disturbing is the identification of the local primary school. He's got a green jumper on. It's almost identical to the local primary school uniform. Right. You know, so that is very, very disturbing. So again,
it's either an amazing coincidence or there's something else going on here that this is literally being staged.
Well, let's talk about coincidence. I've been in business for 24 years, Brian. I've been about, I'm 43 years of age. I don't believe in coincidence. Some people do. I don't. And when I'm continually seeing these sort of things, it's absolutely obvious that they've been specifically tailored for this area. Now, I tried to find this play that was shown in Neath to see if they put the local school jumper on the child in that area with the same play. But these people know exactly what they're doing. That is a child sacrifice play, reef above his head, Moloch, the child sacrifice god. That is a symbol of Moloch.
And we're going to see some more images of that play, aren't we?
Yeah.
So what about this organisation here, Nova? How does that fit in?
Well, I wanted to understand the psychology clearly. I didn't want to make my own interpretation or make this stuff up. These are serious issues. We're talking about children's health. So this is a scientific publication that was put together by scientists, professors of suicidology. And I think it's quite clear. Let me just read it out to you.
Well, you can see it because I'm having trouble from here. We're okay.
Artistic depictions of suicide can also have a contagion effect, causing suicide among members of the real world audience. So that speaks in itself, that's volumes.
So these people are warning that if you show the right images or the wrong images, you can actually trigger suicides amongst people.
Well, look, we're looking at psychology, right? So we're not looking for a knife. We're looking at crimes, but we're not looking for a knife. We're not looking for a baseball bat. We've got the bodies, of course. We've got lots of bodies. We're not looking for a gun. We're looking for psychological triggers. We're looking for primers for suicide. So I've got Nova Productions there, which is a scientific publication put together by professors of suicidology that is confirming that the images that are being put out have all the same age children, the same age children that we got an alarming suicide escalation of. They're saying there that these images can actually cause suicide in the real world. All right, so the same as the plays.
Right, so we're saying here this is not coming out of your mouth in the first instance. This is coming out of experts who have actually, many of them have been warning the public for a very long time. That if you do the wrong thing, you can actually help to trigger suicide.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and we've got a picture here. This is taken from Theatre in Wales, which is advertising the sorts of theatre that's now appearing, and it says at paragraph 2 there in the middle of the slide, National Theatre Wales, The Village Social, which is the play that we've just been having a look at, and this. Website for Theatre in Wales is basically showing that a variety of these plays are happening across Well, it's not only South Wales, is it? It's Wales as a whole with Welsh theatre.
They're flat out, Brian. What I've identified through my research is they're flat out in Cornwall, Ireland, Wales, and particularly Scotland. Which, if you look at our history, that's where all the Britons fled to at the when we had the invasion with the Romans. So I believe this is particularly a racially motivated crimes. This is what I believe, and I believe they're attacking Britons. There was a census done in the 2000. The 98% of the people in Britain in 2000 have been here, got the identical DNA from 40,000 years ago, and I believe this is proper extremism. I believe this is a group who absolutely hate us as a homogeneous racial population, and this is what I'm picking up.
Right, and we're going to be coming on to that point later on in the discussion.
Yeah, no, that's not an issue I can prove, mind.
Yeah.
But from everything I'm reading and my research, this is my belief. But just put that to the side and let's just concentrate.
Let's have a look at the evidence. At the
evidence,
yeah. So we've got some photographs here of this play, and I think people are going to be really disturbed by these images. And we will say at this point that the audience that this play's been shown to includes adults, teenagers, and in fact young children, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, this is another specific image. Can you just get that up on the screen, Brian? This is another specific image. Some people might look at this and think, oh, how bizarre, and that's weird. Well, I know exactly what that is. That is the traits of psychological warfare. If you read psychological warfare and exactly what it is, it's an extremist group, or mainly anti-government groups. What Wikipedia says, there's other versions of it, and they say that it's a group trying to change the what's the word, Brian?
Values, views, and values.
The system values of the host society. So let's just break this down. We've got a woman there, a bloated.
I don't know what she's supposed to be. A bear. It looks dirty. She looks dirty. It doesn't look like a bear's outfit. It looks like some fat, scruffy monks. A monk?
Yeah. Monk.
Yeah,
so
maybe.
She's a bloated, horrible-looking beast. She's got a crucifix, huge wooden crucifix on her neck. That there is our culture, our faith, our moral values.
So it's mocking Christianity, in your opinion?
Absolutely, definitely. Changing the value systems of the host population. So then we have a look at the actors behind.
We're going to be able to show them in a bit more detail in a minute, but
well, it's actually
take us through. Yeah.
So we got a man dressed up as a woman, transvestite. I would say that's against our normal system of values in our country.
Yeah.
Then we've got a demonic woman with glaring eyes in the background, with a dog's head that's been cut off. All of us in the West love our animals. We absolutely adore our animals. So again, that's another image that I would say that's attacking our sensible norms. We then got a woman and a man on the left-hand side, which are bizarre to say the least. They've got blood or blood stars or something on their genitalia.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's mocking our... Is that a man and a wife? And they're mocking a man and a wife? That there has been specifically designed to degrade our customary values. There's no two ways about it. Yeah. And other plays that I've looked at, again, has been of a very similar nature, degrading our value structures.
Right. And you're also aware that these performances are not cheap performances. They're not put on by a few actors with £100 in their back pocket. The lighting is very sophisticated. The whole setup. And we did mention it in a previous interview, but of course Rudery Hall, which was at one stage almost failing, suddenly received a £600,000 grant from the Welsh Assembly, which permitted these plays to occur.
Absolutely. Now, if you do a Google search, funding community centres Wales, because the thing is, we're living in very isolated rural communities, so people would think, oh, we've got a wonderful parish hall and the Welsh National Theatre is coming and blah, blah, blah. And I've spoken to people about it, and they think that it's unique what's going on in Rudbury. Well, it's not. That's all you've got to do is go into Google, but community funding, community parish hall funding, or words such as that, and have a look at the lists. And then what you've got to do is have a look exactly what's going on in those community centres as well. They've set up these networks right the way around Wales. Yeah. And you know, they're flat out with degrading, filthy images.
So your research, first of all, showed you South Wales in particular and Wales, right. And then you discovered that as you followed these networks, you went further and further.
Well, as I said earlier, I've actually identified what they are domestic terrorists. It's very structured, they've highly organised, and they've been attacking me and my family. They've used me as a scapegoat for the community to A, to empower themselves as community leaders, and B, to deflect what they're really doing. So I've identified these in other community centres right the way around Wales. And if you put social entrepreneur in the Google search engine with Saul Alinsky, and have a look what comes up. Yeah. So it's not me saying this. And then put social entrepreneur Rudry, and you'll identify the people who are trained in these techniques.
And of course I can reinforce what Tim is saying here, because the UK column is phoned on a regular basis by people who are reporting horrific stories within their communities about being bullied, intimidated, having property stolen from them, threatened, physical violence in some cases, warned off by their local authority if they've found fraud and corruption. And many of these people are talking about coming up against groups of people acting together, which is the sort of thing you've experienced.
Well, when they started on me in 2011, June 2011, what I identified is that they would report me for something to the council, and then they would report my neighbour, and then they would report another one of my neighbours. And because of the council, one council official, the team leader of Rudry area, Gareth Lewis, said to me, he said, so-and-so isn't very popular here because he's been reporting people we believe is very suspicious, and he's been reporting people in Rudry for minor offences, plan offences, so much so that he's very unpopular. And then he started to focus his attention against us and started reporting officers. Well, I looked at this man's Twitter, and I've still got it. I took a screenshot of it. And he went on a course called Disruptive Innovation. So this man is reporting. I spoke to one of my neighbours, and he spoke to a doctor that's just up the lane, just 100 yards away from us. And he said this man was doing the same to him. So what they're doing, basically, they're causing disruption in the community.
And UK column and talks, and we've also broadcast it. Perhaps we'll have to get the film out again. We've actually aired a talk that was done in London at one of the business schools, where a man from a local authority is on stage saying we need more disruptors inside organisations in order to promote change. Yeah. Now I'm going to bring us back to these photographs. If we just have a quick look at the previous one, Mike, if we may. So just to refresh people's minds over, that was what we were looking at. And you'd mentioned the lady with the glaring, it's the light on her glasses actually, just to the right of the main figure. Let's have a look at this in more detail. This is an absolutely shocking image. Why would people want to be looking at a severed dog's head? What would that do? What would that do to a young mind?
It's disturbing to say the least. But what that is a specific attack against our cultural values, our normal cultural values. Like I said, we all love animals. They got a dog with a head cut off on top of a demonic, possessed woman. Being. Behind that again is the sacrifice god Moloch.
Okay. Well, we'll just run through the images we've got here. This one is from another scene in the play. I find this absolutely horrific. It seems to me that
it's grotesque.
It's got undertones of paedophilia in this.
I did think that, to be honest, Brian. I didn't want to say that. But again, what we're looking at, if you look at the man and woman up the top of the stage,
I think we can focus in on them.
Is that a representation of a husband and wife, a traditional husband and wife? It's a degrading image. You look at that man, and I think it's absolutely sickening. Is it part of a baby, or it's a mutilated baby, isn't it? Or is it two babies? But again, it's a man dressed up as a child, woman, freak.
And what we don't know, I can't tell what's actually coming down his leg, but is it blood? It seems to be blood. I don't know whether that's blood on the lady.
It's just disgusting. Everything to do with that image is degrading our cultural norms, psychological warfare. I just make a point of this now, Brian, right? Because a lot of people could look at this and think, oh, they're just over-exaggerating this. Have we ever seen a film presented like that? A mainstream film? I haven't, ever.
Only, well, I'm going to say no, but if you want to, you're going to have to go into the underworld of very dark, unpleasant films to see that sort of stuff on.
Sick, twisted, paedophilic stuff. But what I'm talking about is, would we see that sort of stuff, a film? Can anybody think to themselves, have they seen that on the mainstream television? Have they seen that sort of imagery and those sort of productions in mainstream films? I've never in my life. We've seen horror films. This isn't horror. Yeah. We've seen comedy. We've seen propaganda. I've never seen this sort of stuff mixed up like this.
This is twisted. There's something very sinister and dark underneath. Yeah. Let's look at this image,
now,
because I know...
I also suspect, I know these people are trained in behaviour modification. I think you're more of an expert in this than me. But what if they're using specific lighting? We know there's hypnotists in there. We know... I looked at Puffler Pant going back a couple of weeks ago. I showed it to the police. And there's 3 hypnotists there working in amongst children. It's incredible. Yeah. So is it reasonable to say they're using specific lighting and specific audio equipment? Because I do understand a little bit.
To influence people's minds and thoughts.
To exacerbate and increase the effects of hypnosis. So if we got 45 beats per 60 seconds, I know this is consistent with hypnotizing people. These people are hypnotists. They're trained in CBT, NLP.
Trained in NLP, yeah.
We got mind experts operating from that facility, the same as over Puffler Pant and other community centres. So are they compounding their efforts to degrade us and for these images to make a real impact with specific lighting and audio equipment? Well, I think it's a reasonable assumption.
Well, I believe it's a very reasonable assumption, because we've started to get other people suggesting that this is actually the case. These are sophisticated performances. So tell us about this image here.
Well, that's Baphomet, Satan, and to the left, is it that woman, the bloated nun?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yeah. So is she sort of...
Worshipping?
Worshipping, maybe, the devil, waiting for the devil. The man on the right-hand side looks a little bit shocked. Yeah. And we know that this has had an amazing impact on the adult audience who were shocked. Many of them were shocked. Well, I spoke to a few of the villagers. I'm speaking to lots of people in the village now, and they've been very friendly to me. Now they're starting to understand what's going on. They all know who's doing it and who's behind it. And they said that a good handful of them watched this play and were fairly sickened by it. And a few of them left halfway through. They just thought, what was this about? But it's been widely shown to children, as have many other plays of this sort of genre. Remember the age category? I think that play, I can't guarantee this, but I'm sure the age limit was 15 plus. So again, we've got that magic figure of 15 years of age. Yeah. Which is where the suicides are occurring. Yeah. Exactly. So this one will be difficult for people to read, but if you freeze your screen in due course, you can take your time to work through it. This is something you picked up from the internet, where somebody was talking about Ravenshaw Academy, and it suggested, if I just highlighted it here, that it's saying that it's talking about a local school. It's mentioning the village of Rudry, and then it's talking about supposedly fictitious local school. But it says, since the school celebrated its 314th anniversary, the suicide rate has reached an all-time high. What's the significance of this stuff? Well, the number 314 is specific to Satanism. I know that for a fact, right? I've done a little bit of research on it, but I don't quite understand it that well. But I know it's a specific satanic calendar. The 314 relates to. We've also, I mean, what they're doing is they're predicting suicide, a mass suicide in Rudry School. I mean, this is absolutely incredible. If you look at the heading, it says the time is now. And then they're going on about, they're predicting a suicide, and people are thinking, is there a mass suicide of children they're talking about, or is it murder? but the teachers are keeping the children in school just in case.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I found this on, you can find it on the internet. I showed it to the police.
And your point is that once you start following this through, you look at the people, you look at the networks, you look at the organisations, you look at the psychological stuff, the CBT, the NLP, you come into these sorts of areas.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I could say this is a load of nonsense, couldn't I, right? But then somebody has taken a real effort. That's not a child writing that. This is
a mind is
somebody with
mature mind
with a lot of knowledge about Satanism has written that, and they're predicting a mass suicide of children in Rudbury. And then when we look at the parish hall, they're putting out assaulted self-images of children. I think it says it all. But I've sent that to the police. They've said they've sent it a special branch, all this material, because there's hundreds of files on it. And I'd like to find who put that material out. Because
and we know a lot of the police are concerned about this, not only in South Wales, but in other parts of the country, as we're going to be looking at some sort of responses later on.
Well, they're very, very concerned. I had a police officer over a few weeks ago. A few of them, I was speaking to him for a few hours, and they said, the things you've shown us, he said, is like, wow, you know, what do we do about this? Because they don't quite understand it. I don't think it's that complex. It takes a little while to get your head around it. But when you look at the imagery, you look at the psychology, you look at the law, A, B, C, they're encouraging suicides of children.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
And we're going to be coming on to why would you do this? What and who's doing it? Because as we dig into it, it starts to emerge. There's an attack going on here, isn't there?
Definitely.
Against young people.
100%. So
what about this one? We've got Indie London. This is another to do with this is to do with productions and the theatre. I think we should be able to blow part of this up. Let's see. And this was where you're saying, if you look into these theatre groups, they're full of people who are mind manipulators, but they're also working with, well, in this case, charities that say they're there to stop this type of thing happening.
Well, a mind representative is at my parish hall, and mind is associated with fringe theatre. Fringe theatre has been one of the main ones who's been pushing out disturbing suicide plays, structured again through Schneidman's failings and the Werther effect. And we can flick onto that, we can show you the evidence that, so we've got evidence there that Sane and Mind, they're organisations who are funded by the European Union to stop suicides. And then if you have a look at, like I said, fringe theatre, and what's going on in my parish hall, it's inconsistent with the feeling or bearing in mind that these people are there to prevent suicides. So if they're there to prevent suicides, what are they doing associated with these images, and what are they doing associated with the theatre productions that's putting her out? Well, just incredible.
For me, I'll just highlight one bit here at the bottom which we missed. We've got the suicide aspect. Here's the play about teenage suicide. So we're pointing out that within this organisation, as Tim's saying here, you've got one of these production companies. It's working supposedly with the charities who are supposed to be stopping the suicide. It's a mix. I believe I've done about 300 talks around UK. I have never had a single problem at any talk until I went to Swansea a year or so ago to talk about what I knew about suicides. And it was incredible that there was a demonstration which was organised by a young man from, I think it was Swansea University, but he was assisted by a local MP.
Yeah, I remember it well.
Why are people in power in South Wales so frightened of information and research into the suicides? Is it because we're beginning to dig up something that...
Very nasty. We can only speculate about that, Brian, because we're not the law, are we? Yeah. So all we can do is point out to show what's going on, and then ask why our representatives, higher representatives, are trying to attack us for showing what's going on to the most important thing in our society, and that's children. Yeah. You've got on the screen at the moment, at top left-hand corner, Catherine Pascal. Now that woman, when I looked at her Twitter, we still got screenshots of her all. She was talking suicide, 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 suicide. She also had a play, one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. She had a link to YouTube of a 4-year-old little child playing with a dead squirrel. Playing with this dead squirrel. And I just looked at her and I thought, why?
It's not normal.
Well, why? Yeah, exactly. I thought, like, you know, what is wrong with this woman's mind? She was talking about some famous suicide writer. This is a woman who's responsible for putting out material to our children.
And of course, the whole funding for the National Theatre of Wales is coming from the National Lottery, and it's coming out of public pots.
Well, that's another story, right? It's a complex story, but the funding is all coming from the same source, but it's being channeled through different companies and different things like the lottery and everything else. It's a very complicated subject, the funding.
We'll come back to that, or we'll do another issue on that, but we can say to people, if you want to start unpicking what's happening here, follow the money, that classic saying, follow the money. What about this? We've got a lady eating a bun, or a cake. What's going on here?
I wish we had time to show all the full plays to what we're talking about, because that there was a woman in a banqueting hall, and she's glorifying suicide by showing children to enjoy eating prescription tablets. And it's really gruesome, and flashing imagery is coming up on the screen. Kill. Natalie Kills is actually called. So the lady's about 18, 19, maybe 20 years of age, late teens, and she got this fairy cake that she's encouraging eating tablets. Now, that play was the first play on a woman's Twitter called Jake Dyke. I made some inquiries. She's actually running a youth club in Bedwas. And what I saw then is the people who were running my parish hall, who I identified who use these terrorist skills, are also involved with Bedwas Theatre as well.
Right.
So what is going on from Bedwas? Because that's the image that I saw on her, a play on her Twitter. It's very disturbing. I looked over in Cullinan, same sort of thing, specific suicide plays with the same themes. I've looked over in Neath, same sort of stuff, community centres. I've looked in Bridgend, loads of it, absolutely. Yeah,
and we're seeing it in Cornwall as well. If we take a jump, we know it's going on in Cornwall, we know it's going on in Devon.
We now know it's going on in Northampton, in the rural countryside, from village halls in Northampton. Yeah. So it's not something that I'm looking at just now in Rudbury, because of course I want to understand all of this. I want to understand what it meant and what sort of impact it would have on innocent children's minds. Yeah. And there's no doubt at all that it's encouraging suicide. If you put a banqueting play with a 18, 19, 20-year-old woman, and she's glorifying, and there is glorifying, some of the tablets she's putting into her mouth has got little smileys on them. And she's picking them up off the table, and she's picking them out of tablets, and she's smiling. That's absolutely incredible. Yeah,
and this comes under the Werther effect. You're giving people images, correct me if I got this wrong, but you're giving people images which assist.
We don't really have to go into the technical detail on this one, do we? Because what they're actually doing is they're encouraging suicide. It's as simple as that. There's the law. Is that encouraging suicide? Mm. Well, yes, it is. And then you look at the plays. Is that encouraging suicide? Well, of course it is. Mm. You look at the themes and the storylines, what's it all about? It fits Schneidman's failings, which is a very famous suicide expert, devoted his life to understanding the primers of suicide: thwarted love, lost belongingness, fractured control, overburdenedness, assaulted self-image. We got 2 lists of primers that cause suicide. Then when you look at the storylines, I mean, a child would know, I shouldn't say that, really sorry. Anybody would know that those storylines fit Schneidman's failings. So why is that? A man called Albert Davis, MB, very well-respected councillor over the Rhondda Cynon Taf, has been in touch with myself, and he's seen all the information. He picked up himself. I didn't know this. I knew the books were involved as well, but he picked up on a book, a sick-lit book, and I read the storyline, the footnote, and it was about a cancer victim. Hopelessness and suicide, the cause of suicide, is off the chart compared to with depression.
Right, now that's a really good point, because of course at the moment we've got the government in particular trying to suggest that these massive spikes in suicide
It's down to depression.
is due to depression and the economy.
Yeah,
And this does not stack up with
I'm not assuming things or speculating. Look at the psychological studies. Look at Schneidman's failings. Look at the Werther effect. We're not saying it. We're looking at professors of suicidology who's devoted their whole lives to understanding the primers of suicide. So it's not us making accusations or us speculating or guessing. This is a fact.
Right.
Look at Schneidman's failings. Look at the storyline. It's mixed up with identifying the age, hopelessness, specifically encouraging, eating tablets, taking your life, assaulted images. So everything we're looking at with all this imagery, we're not just zoning in on one little play. I mean, it's absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
If you
Well, we've got some evidence here. I've got a little bit of an eye on the clock. Let's have a look at some of the detail of your research. Now, we're going to have to say to viewers again, freeze the shots. You can always come back and revisit it, and some of this will be a little bit tricky for you to read. But essentially, these are web links which are going straight to plays and works about suicide. So in this one, we've got a suicide play for kids. We've got another play about suicide. Suicide, sexually invigorating and the morally asphyxiating and the Nazis. That all sounds pretty nice. Yeah. And at the bottom, another reference with a play cutting off heads and death. Yeah. So, as always, we're saying to viewers and listeners, don't believe us in the first instance if you don't think it stacks up, but do your research, and you might like to look into some of this. There's pages of it. We've got the National Theatre here, another play about suicide, ritual suicide after his master's death, death of the King's Horseman, Shells, Cells, Suicide, National Theatre, play about suicide. She's so low, she's let a web poll decide whether she should stream her suicide. Tech geeks have voted overwhelmingly in favour of seeing her pull the trigger. This is absolutely sick, and this is being paid for by public money.
Yeah. Click on to the next slide, Brian. We've got hundreds of examples.
Well, here we go. We've got love steals us from loneliness.
Whoa, hang on a sec. Love steals us from loneliness. Schneidman's failings. Hopelessness, thwarted love, love steals. Right? See, we're looking at the same storyline again. Yeah. You haven't got to be a genius to work it out, have you? Look at the psychological studies. Look at what these animals are doing to our children. That's how serious it is. Right.
And,
sorry, Brian.
And for me, and I know it's because I'm getting a bit long in the tooth now, but if I go back to what is Marxist subversive doctrine, destroying people's minds, and indeed in some of the Marxist paperwork, it talks about making suicide a normal and acceptable part of society, and that's what I'm just going to give my personal opinion, because you're not saying this, but I'm looking at this and I am actually seeing a pre-planned malevolent attack on the minds and actually the lives of children. These people know what they're doing. A psychological attack. Yeah.
Psychological warfare.
Should we move on to another page, just in case people think there's not enough here? We've got suicide and starvation, the role of the photographer, National Theatre.
Hang on, Brian. Look at the top slide. Suicide for love. Thwarted love. All right?
Yeah.
So we're on the same subject again, aren't we? Schneidman's failings. Right. Thwarted love. Yeah. Lost belongingness. Fractured control, assaulted self-image.
And we've got a caption on one of these things: an unidentified man in his 50s jumps to his death from the Avonmouth Bridge on the M5 near Bristol. Now that is a known suicide, so they're focusing people on how to do it here. What else have we got? Suicide, the veil, the signs looked good, a deliciously decrepit Irish manor, tales of suicide in the house. This is being sold as though this is something nice and normal.
Yeah, and some people are looking at it, you know, and they're thinking, oh, it's a bit of a joke, it's entertainment. I mean, this is absolutely mind-blowing.
Because it's dangerous, particularly for young people.
Yeah, but like I said, if you're looking in isolation, if this happened in your village, 1, 2, 3 plays that were a bit iffy,
Yeah.
You could never imagine that this is a almost like a national learning curriculum now at the moment. Because they're ramming this out. They're ramming this out to children right the way throughout
With
Wales.
millions of pounds of money coming in from the lottery, the Welsh Assembly, central government.
Yeah.
We've now got a central government department which is supposedly about culture, haven't we?
Yeah, yeah.
And we've also got across the country these, many of them absolutely foul statues going up in North Devon. We've got a huge naked pregnant woman with skin stripped off the right-hand side of her body so that you can see
showing the
skull
fetus.
and the fetus.
Yeah. Well, again, have a look at the Wikipedia or any other example that what we're looking at is psychological warfare.
Yeah.
All right.
And we've got another page here. We're going to move on a bit quickly here. What have we got? We've got rope hanging young female. Now, this is very significant because, of course, one of the statistics that shows us that something is not right, is not normal within suicides, is that the overwhelming number of these young people are hanging themselves.
Yeah.
And statistics, nasty subject, but statistics show us there's generally a split between males and females. Males tend towards hanging, females will probably take pills or something else. We're now seeing all these young people hanging themselves.
They're all hanging themselves. And what I'm now seeing as well, they're recategorising suicide as death through misadventure. This is what I'm seeing in Caerphilly, in Neath, in Bridgend. It's not just Bridgend. We're looking at this overall. I think the Bridgend issue, I think that was just escaping into the public arena for a moment. I think this is flat out also in Ireland.
Do you know what the actual statistics of deaths in South Wales from suicide are amongst these young people? How many people?
It's being skewed. I believe is off the charts. They're putting lithium in our water to reduce the suicide levels. To drug a whole population, I mean, something must be drastically going on.
Should we just give a figure? We'll say my figure, and this is one of the key things, these figures are being hidden in Wales at the moment, a minimum of 80 young people, and most people don't realise, but these suicides are continuing at the moment, but it's being suppressed.
We've got a team from America, from Boston, very professional, well-funded team, also being funded, also involved, I don't want to misquote something, with the People magazine, which is the biggest publication virtually in the world. And they came over, they interviewed me for 2 hours, and they've got a team of people who've been speaking to all the parents. And they've interviewed people, and they're talking about figures, and local residents are saying, 20? Are you mad? We're looking at hundreds. This is absolutely off the chart. Well, that would be consistent, wouldn't it, with DEFRA putting lithium cyclotropic drugs in our water, specifically to help with a suicide escalation. So that would make sense, wouldn't it? It wouldn't make sense if it was just 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 children. They wouldn't drug us all for that reason.
We've got this mismatch here. We know that the figures are very high. The authority, people in the community are worried about the number. Yeah. But we've got the authorities constantly playing with statistics. They're not looking at what we're looking at.
Well,
I'm just going to.
Sorry, go on.
I've just got to pressurise you a bit because the clock's ticking. Let's just show the last couple of pages here. I think we had 8 of these altogether because we wanted to make sure that the audience knew that we'd done the homework on this. Well, you have done the homework with your team. Teenage girls being taught how to write their own suicide notes, just 12 miles from tragedy here, Bridgend.
Right, that was over in Hawthorne High School. It's my belief that that was a common purpose graduate doing that.
Right.
Because that didn't just, sorry, was that Hawthorne High School?
I'm not sure it says on here, but there is.
There is 12 miles away.
Okay.
Sorry. So we've got that going on in Hawthorne High School. We've also got that going on in Cornwall. If you can do the search, you can find this on the internet yourself. That's also going on in Scotland. That's also going on in Ireland.
Right.
So we've got people within schools who have made their way into schools, and they're teaching children to write their own suicide notes. Over in Cornwall, there was almost a riot over it.
Yes.
And I've sent you that as well.
Yeah.
Because
indeed,
parents saw the children were told to graphically write and dramatise a suicide note. In Caerphilly, there was a woman in St Martin's School. This hit the mainstream headlines again, and she was asking children. She got a group of children together, and she was doing a suicide club. She was asking them to dramatise and emphasise what it's like to die. And just imagine it, can't you? Picture is absolutely gruesome.
Yeah.
So we're not just looking at plays. We're not just looking at books being tailor-made to fit the Schneidman's failings that actually triggers suicide. We've got random teachers showing children, encouraging them to dramatise suicide and to write suicide notes.
So either these teachers don't understand what they're doing, they've been fooled into using material which is highly dangerous, or we've got to assume that they do know what they're doing, which is a pretty horrific thought.
Well, it's like I said earlier, in my community, in other communities, the Welsh Assembly mentioned this about the woman encouraging children to write suicide notes. We all think it's isolated, it's one issue. Yeah. This is a massive drive, and I believe it's a drive for depopulation. Somebody said to me, my solicitor actually said to me, 80 children dead, he said, Tim, is not really depopulation, is it? They're not just doing this with suicide material, they're doing it with pathways and all sorts. Mm. And if you look at the statistics, I think it was, we've got a suicide statistics higher than sub-Saharan Africa in Britain in 2013. Yeah.
And we've also got thousands of people dying in hospitals, which still hasn't actually come out. So
pathways.
The mentality that our, let's just say we've got members of the establishment, we've got MPs, we've got civil servants who don't seem bothered by the fact that people are dying in hospitals. Well, the man hasn't even stood down yet, has he?
No. What we're doing now at the moment, we're generalising. But I would like to look at the specifics. We've got pathways. A doctor alerted the papers because 500,000 elderly people were suspiciously dying. One woman was taken to court for something was saline or something. But then he found out they got a system called pathways operating in hospitals.
This is in the NHS we're talking about.
In the NHS. 130,000 elderly people every year are being put to death in the most cruel way. They're having this stuff is real. Yeah. They're withdrawing their water and other nutrients away from them to kill them.
Yeah, our point here is that people are dying in large numbers in UK. So this is perfectly possible. We've got where are we? We're going to run through these very quickly. Another page of suicides. They've been in Scotland here. What does it say? One says, saw a couple of Scots shows, new writing. One was a breath of fresh air. As for the other, an interesting and auspicious first scene led rapidly into a mire of self-harming, sadomasochistic sex, medical masturbation, and ending in a sadistic, anaesthetised cesarean during a summer barbecue. This is sick material, isn't it?
It's disgusting.
And it's being paid for by the public purse.
But like I said, don't look at this in isolation. Join the dots. Yeah. Look at everything that's going on.
Okay. Last one here. Well, we can see it straight away. Suicide play, assisted suicide, suicide and the Nazis mentioned again there. And then we've got cutting off heads and deaths and the King's Horseman. So I think that was 8 pages of research. Go and look at the material yourself. It's not us just saying this exists. You can see it for yourself. And as Tim has just mentioned, we've got this stuff being mentioned in the mainstream press.
Right. I've been in touch with a handful of very senior, experienced counsellors in Caerphilly, real good people. And they're looking at this material now and they're very, very worried about it. One of them said to me the other day, our last video, that somebody mentioned to him, they're just trying to frighten us, right? They're just trying to make us frightened. Well, that's not the case. Look at all the material. Please go back on this video and look at all this material we're showing.
Isn't it amazing? You try and warn people what you see happening. They don't say, let's look into this. There's automatically a block comes up, and we're going to show a little bit later in this interview that we've actually got MPs trying to say that what we're showing here doesn't exist.
Well,
it's amazing, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But the reason people won't believe it is because it's so terrible. Remember, our system of governance is changing. We're entering a proper fascist system. The European Union's been structured on the Soviet Union. Exactly the same thing happened over there. Wholesale murder. They're looking at the population like they'd look at a businessman would look at their books. Get rid of the vulnerable. Get rid of the elderly. Let's get the population down and all the rest of it.
Get rid of the useless eaters. This is what we're talking about.
Well, that's what they call them, don't they? Useless eaters. This is what these people are doing. They're monsters.
Yeah. Tell us about this Mail article here with the sick lit books. Right.
Well, 2 weeks ago, Councillor Albert Davis picked up this book. I didn't, because he watched our video, and he said to all the cabinet members, watched him and Brian speaking before making a decision on it. But he found this book himself, and I read the storyline. It's hopelessness, thwarted love again. You know, this book has been specifically tailored to actually cause suicide.
Right. So it says here, as plots go, it's mawkish at best, exploitive at worst. Diagnosed with stage 4 thyroid cancer at the age of 13, Hazel spends most of her time tethered to an oxygen tank and is running out of hope. Tales of teenage cancer. So these are sick books which the government is actually paying to get into schools.
It's not our government, is it? It's individuals within our government. Individuals who know exactly what they're doing. Yeah. Who are being funded by big banks, big bankers, and they're pushing this out as a depopulation agenda. So Albert, I spoke to Albert and his wife at length. Lovely people, real, genuine, old school, lot of experience. And Albert's wife said to me, she cried, she sobbed when she read this book. Yeah. She feels so strongly about it.
That's what it does to an adult. So what does it do to a 13-year-old?
And that's somebody who, I mean, they have now because I've shown them, but that's somebody who haven't read the psychology behind it. And remember what I said about Schneidman's feelings? Once again, I can't emphasize that enough. You look at the storyline, it fits suicide triggers. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at that through the plays. We're looking at that through the depictions. We're looking at that through the literature. So it's all the same. It's all been tailored specifically to primers that create suicide. Yeah. So everybody's thinking, oh my God, we've got this massive suicide problem in Britain. This economic situation is causing it. This is causing, that's causing it. Look at what we're looking at. I mean, Jesus. Yeah. I mean, haven't they got eyes? This is unbelievable. What are people doing about it? I understand that councillors are now being threatened by legal staff to drop this or else. What? Drop the possible...
The exposure of what's happening.
Well, the possible premeditated engineer of murder against vulnerable children. Yeah. Are we looking at that?
Yeah. And this is a theme, of course, which many victims in other parts of the country talk to us about, being threatened by the legal departments of councils. And certainly that's happened in South Wales with regard to the stealing of children by social services. There have been some very tough gagging orders pushed out whenever the public sector's really challenged as to what's going on. And of course we're seeing it in the NHS, 15 million spent to gag 600 people, trying to say something's wrong, people are dying.
Well, gagging orders, look at the law in relation to harassment. We're showing criminal activity. I don't think anybody can say any different. We're looking at criminal, specifically premeditated acts. And the law is quite clear. It says that to expose criminal activity, we're well within our rights and we're immune from prosecution of any form of alleged accusations of harassment. So, look, we are being upstanding members of the community, as far as I'm concerned, protecting and looking out for the most vulnerable part of our society, and that's children. Nothing's more important. So we're looking at issues where people are deliberately, with premeditation, putting out specific storylines that fit psychological triggers of children. Now, I defy anybody.
Triggers of the suicide of children.
Sorry, that's what I meant. So this is a very important issue, And people need to get a grips with it. It's not that complicated. Look at the material.
When you start looking, tell us about this. This is a banner is this from Rudry?
It is from Rudry again, yeah. So we've got a group of people using behaviour modification on adults and children. We've got an organisation called Gerrish, which is a subsidiary company to Mind. And I've looked at the criteria they're training their charity workers. So they bring somebody in who's clinically depressed. Imagine, I'm not talking about somebody who's got up one morning and got a headache or something. I'm talking about clinical depression. They're pulling people in with clinical depression, and they're using behaviour sciences on them and combining it with the advice from Gerrish. First question they're being advised to ask people is, have they thought about taking their own life? And the second is, tell me how. And it says in brackets, be firm. I mean, my God, this is unbelievable.
Because, explain that for listeners, why is that the wrong thing to do?
Right, okay, well, let's look at this structurally, right? How long is their free interview or help going to last for? Should we say 30 minutes? If they can get out of them firmly, have you thought about suicide, and what have you thought of, how have you thought about doing it? I'm sure that would dominate half an hour a session. Let's call it an hour. I reckon it dominated, because that's obviously the most important, serious issue. So they walk away, and if I went into a meeting like that and I was suffering from clinical depression, thwarted love, let's just say I lost my family, I'm clinically depressed, my God, I need somebody to talk to. So mixing up the thought of suicide again with hopelessness, and all of a sudden somebody's walking up. Because if I walked in there and I wasn't feeling suicidal, I just wanted somebody to talk to. I wanted a support network. I wanted somebody to help me. And then I walked away after speaking about all that. If I didn't think about suicide previously, and sorry to laugh.
You do now.
I do now.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing because it's so obviously wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm going to reinforce this by saying that we have had a number of Gulf War veterans and in fact from Afghanistan as well, military people who are talking about going through compulsory counselling, in which they are telling, and these are people from different parts of the country, they don't know each other, totally independent, saying in the so-called counselling sessions they were actually being encouraged to think about suicide.
Well, yeah, so but all these centres have had massive funding,
pushed through,
and every single one of them are using specific Soviet-type hypnosis on vulnerable individuals, people who are suffering with depression, children. They're degrading our traditional values at all these centres. Don't take my word for it. Look at the rest of the community centres. Every single one of them bang at it. So why have these centres been set up? I'd say these centres have been set up for specifically, I'm not going to say what I say, to destabilise and to change the value systems of the host society. And read on Wikipedia or any other source you want. What we're looking at is clear. It's not us saying what's going on. There's the evidence.
Yeah. What about this one? This is... oh, sorry, something I'll just add, the mindfulness bit. If you do your research, of course, the Centre for Mindfulness Research is Oxford University.
Yeah.
And well, there's a whole centre of people there actually saying that we really can't be well unless we've learnt how to be mindful, and then we can be calm amongst the chaos. So one of the themes, not for today's interview, but we've certainly been covering this on the UK column Live News, is that chaos is being introduced into this country, and we've got a mindfulness team saying you need this applied behavioural psychology to be normal.
Well, what it's quite deep stuff actually, right?
And there's not too long for it, it's all right, don't worry about that.
They're, what they're doing, they're prepping everybody up to be leaders.
Yeah.
And so a leader is obviously dominant, and they're using these techniques. This is my belief. It's a little bit more sketchy to what we were just talking about, but I believe they're using techniques to make everybody confrontational. And a few of my neighbours from 5 years ago, I got letters off them actually saying I'm a wonderful neighbour and everything else. All of a sudden they've turned on me, and both the wife and the husband unbelievably confrontational. As we get older, we learn to defuse situations much easier. But if everybody's leaders and they're all having these types of Soviet-type brainwashing methods to prep them up as leaders, I mean, we're going to have friction, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We're going to have everybody...
everybody thinks they're a leader. Everybody thinks they're going to be top dog. Doesn't matter if you make a mistake. That's another part of the psychology.
That's not us saying that. That's on the information, isn't it? So if I give an example of it, if I parked outside of my house and let's just say I half parked over my neighbour's parking place, being adults, we probably wouldn't even mention it. And even if we did, we'd be very, very careful. I'm ever so sorry, because we want to maintain a good relationship, particularly with our neighbours, don't we? So, so what if we're all leaders and we start, oi, you're in my parking place, right? So this is the sort of techniques they're introducing.
Yeah, right. So well-being. Just a quick comment on this, because we've got quite a lot of material still to come up. This is just, I suppose, another event where you see the concern about minds, well-being, empowerment, achieve all you want to achieve.
Well, it's all about the mind. It's all about psychology. This is what they're doing from these community centres.
Yeah.
If you look at everything they're doing, is all behaviour science.
Yeah.
All of it, every ounce of it.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to keep reinforcing the facts of what we're seeing. I've shown this several times before. We're going to do it very, very quickly. But here's a film company, First Light, taking public money, lottery money, and they're teaching children how to produce horror films.
Hang on, Brian. Is that a coincidence? Isn't that a coincidence?
Sorry, what's the coincidence?
Well, the dog with a rope round his neck. It's just a coincidence.
Well, we showed the dog with his... Here's the dog.
Yeah.
This is the film.
We're obviously just making this up and trying to frighten people.
Yeah.
I'm just reinforcing the fact that what we're looking at is not a coincidence. This is the theme. This is what they're pushing out. Right?
And this slide as well. So this is part of actually teaching adults, but also younger audiences, how to achieve a realistic hanging man effect.
Yeah, well, this was used in conjunction with theatre productions. So they're pulling children in and they're giving them classes of how to fake a realistic hanging effect. And that was showed just prior and during the suicide escalation in and around Bridgend area. Same thing was happening in Ireland. In Ireland in 2005, they introduced suicide prevention strategies. The same year, the suicide escalated by 568%. I mean, that's massive. And if they can argue and say, well, hang on a sec, our suicide prevention strategies didn't start till 2006. It was compounded by another 37%. Suicide prevention strategies were set up in Bridgend in May, June 2006. Our huge suicide cluster started January 2007. What's going on?
Well, or is it an amazing coincidence?
Another coincidence, Brian.
Yeah.
So, so again, let's look at the facts. We've got so-called suicide charities, fact, working with theatre productions that's showing that filth to innocent children. So what are they actually doing? These people are absolutely trained. They know a damn sight more than me. They know a damn sight more than most of us. I'm just pointing out some of the basic facts. So these people know how suicide, what the suicide primers are.
Yeah.
Suicide is about.
Okay, let's move on through. We may be able to pinch a few more minutes, but the clock's telling us we've got to get a little bit of a move on here. So we get through these slides. We've got into oblivion here. Yeah. This is just the type of material circulating on the internet.
Yeah, well, they're talking about Rudry again in this oblivion thing, and I showed this to the police, and I said, this was at the same time, by the way, it was introduced onto the internet as the suicide and play for the children in Rudry, showing the green jumper, the same as the Rudry Parish Hall. So that was introduced at the same time, predicting there's going to be a mass suicide of children, or is it murder, right? So it'd be very interesting to see who's behind that.
Right. And this one's getting into the establishment here, because we got the International Federation of Arts Councils and Culture Agencies. This is part of the attribute of what we're looking at, is that this isn't just something we're seeing on a nationwide basis. There's an international component. And the Welsh Government here is saying that it's supporting these new leaders, and it's mentioning claw leadership. So we've got a mixture of leadership training, psychology, creative theatre. It's a pretty...
It's all cyber warfare, isn't it? Now, Claude Duffield, the man I was talking about earlier, who was going around strategically reporting neighbours on each other to cause friction, he was a Claude Duffield graduate. And he was also a Common Purpose graduate, even ILM 7.
Right.
So that fits with the leadership programs.
Okay.
They're prepping these people up to be aggressive and to cause agitation in our communities.
We've got another one here. This is, again, Arts Council of Wales, and we're showing that there's a huge amount of material showing how much effort is being put into getting into not only theatre, but here we've got education as well. Yeah, we're getting right into the school system. More dodgy stuff, I think we can say, going on in Welsh schools. So in an ethics module, this is Caerphilly, we're going to be studying a range of ethical topics such as abortion, euthanasia and genetic engineering, preparing the children for the...
Earlier on we spoke about Antonio Gramsci's work, and I'm not sure we decided to keep it out because it's a complicated subject.
Yeah.
But basically, if this sort of thing was going on 20 years ago, my God, people would go absolutely berserk.
Yeah.
Antonio Gramsci said that to implement all of this, you've got to do it over incrementally over a period of a few decades. Yeah. So if you look at what's going on right now, we're having our freedoms taken off us, we're being taxed to the hilt, we're having our private property rights taken off us, we've got professional agitators in our community, we've got these people encouraging the suicides of children. Can you imagine if this all of a sudden happened 20 years ago? People are not even seeing it anymore. No. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So Antonio,
and when it is brought to people's attention, as we're going to show, you get threatened, actually. You've been threatened. Other researchers in this subject have been threatened. They're having their email accounts destroyed. So somebody does not want the information to come out.
We're trying to protect children, essentially. And we're being attacked for it, which is absolutely amazing. But like I said, Antonio Gramsci's work was gradualism to communism, gradualism to Marxism.
Yep.
This is part of UK.gov's policy agenda. So they know exactly what they're doing. They're attacking farmers. They're doing it incrementally. These groups are sending groups around farms. They're sending groups around to people's private property to agitate, just to wear people down incrementally. I'm watching this going on. Right.
Let's follow it through. A bit more from Caerphilly here. This is one of the websites. We just highlight it because of film My Dead Love. This is another suicide film.
Well, is there another coincidence again? Schneidman's failings. Suicide primers, thwarted love. What are we looking at? My Dead Love.
Yeah.
Hopelessness.
Right. And just to emphasise that this is not just a phenomena for South Wales, where Tim's got it all wrong in his area, because here's the Nottingham Post reporting that villagers are getting very, very concerned about the alarming spike in the number of young people committing suicide in the area. Self-harm support group Harmless said there have been 7 suicides in the past 13 months, and people in the village all know of somebody who died. So these suicide clusters are popping up across the country.
That was the rural countryside again in Nottingham,
right.
And if you look at that further, anybody can look at it on the internet. That area, the suicide rate has spiked by 1,200%.
Yeah.
Recently, 1,200%.
Yeah.
So it's just
something going on.
Now, I haven't done a huge amount of research into that, but I've identified these units over there as well, doing the same stuff.
Right. Now, we can stretch to 10 minutes to go now, and I think what we'll do is we'll pump the evidence up for viewers, and of course people can go and see a replay of this interview so they can look at the information. We're going to go quite quickly. You dig into it and you start looking at social entrepreneurs.
Yeah, put in the search engine, your area, social, this is how to identify these people. Social entrepreneur with your area. So I put social entrepreneur Rudry.
Yeah, and what's come up is this,
right,
and of course reference to Alinsky.
Right, okay, so then put social entrepreneur, Saul Alinsky, go through the lists, incredible. So again, it's not me saying it. I know what these people are. I've been on the receiving end of it. And the way they operate is it's always about people power. Saul Alinsky said that you can derive power from two sources, money and people. So these people are getting very close to groups, they're forming groups, and they're using these groups to do their bidding. So they put out the most disgusting lies about somebody, and some people will be so enraged with these carefully constructed lies that they might even take the law in their own hands. I don't say that loosely because I've had people come over to my property and threaten me they don't even know me.
Yeah.
Thank God I can look after myself, but the psychological abuse over the last 14 years of me and my family has been non-stop by these individuals.
Right. Now, we've got an organisation here. We're not focusing on this organisation. We're just simply saying that this is one of a number of organisations where we would like to know exactly what they are doing in the community, right?
Well, I know what UN Limited is. The boss of UN Limited in Wales has advocated on his Twitter, we've taken a screenshot, and he's talking about massive human depopulation. I forget the name of the CEO now, Brian, we discussed earlier, of UN Limited. But this man is talking about unleashing chaotic effects in our communities. How are they going to do it? Well, they're going to do it by using these agitators that I've identified, social entrepreneurs.
Right. This is some of you Unlimited's own material here. So this is part of a poster. This is the sort of thing they're advertising. So there's everything from textiles to learning and developing theatrical techniques and creative dance, music and singing. That's just thing. But this is part of a PowerPoint. Foundation for Social Entrepreneurs. What's the currency? Money, people, power, trust, media and celebrity.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting background.
People, power. Reaching
out and unleashing the energies of people to transform the world. So this is one of a number of groups now trying to...
So just going back on this well-being stuff, they're prepping people up, or everybody to be leaders and everybody to be confrontational. So they want the conflict. They want the animosity.
Well, this would tend to support that because here it's saying we want people to be selfish, which has got to be probably one of the most un-Christian standpoints going.
I was just going to say, is that Christian?
And we follow that up. Cash is king. Yeah. So be selfish, be greedy. That really is. And cash is king. Don't wait for it. Network like crazy, which is what we're talking about.
These people are networking and they're spreading vicious gossip. And people think, oh, this is just about Tim Rogers and Rudry. It couldn't be more wrong. I already know, I've spoken to lots of people now, there are other people they're starting to incrementally bring on the abuse, particularly against landowners. They're using the have-nots, what appear to be the have-nots, against the haves. And the same as the Soviet Union, when they finish with these people, and they've ruined working class people like myself, because we're just working class. Everybody in Rudry is working class. So they'll then concentrate their efforts and attack them.
Yeah.
Everybody's under attack. You just got to understand it.
Right. Now we've got some prompts here for people that they can come back to this and have a look on screen. But these are some of the things which we're saying if they're going on in your school, you ought to be concerned. Circle time and creative visualization. This is absolutely affecting the minds of children, and we've got school teachers talking about this and indeed expressing their concerns. Explicit sex education, dark reading material, and we've got the plays, of course, that we're talking on here. Now, for the record, really, these are quotes which we'll leave people to have a look through, but this is some of the tremendous support that's been coming in from counsellors in particular as a result of the research that you've been doing and other people in the group.
The support network we've got now, Brian, is phenomenal. We've got hundreds of elected councillors emailing us, thank you so much for bringing this to the attention of the public. Thank you so much for, I mean, read it for yourself.
Yeah.
So we've got a massive support network. We've had police commissioners contact us, very worried. We've had MPs, we've had councillors, we've had different help organisations for children, because we're not going for the leaders because we know what this common purpose has done, but we're educating everybody else under that leadership.
Right. So we've put up several screens there. We can't put up, there are hundreds of responses, and we know that this subject has really triggered local councillors in particular. Great support coming in, there's interest, these people are concerned. Let's compare that with the response from the Welsh Assembly. And you told me that in any case the Welsh Assembly had to be prompted to reply. I'll just expand this a bit.
Well, this was very interesting because first Jackie sent over an email with our video, and she sent, we've had so much response, Brian, right? It's hard to sift through it all, we can't show it all. And she said basically Tim Rogers got it completely wrong. And we don't think this material has been rammed out to children. So Jackie took it upon herself to show her all the files. We're only showing some of them. And this is the email she sent back. Basically, they don't care.
Dismissive, we don't care. It's aggressive as well, as we're going to show.
I spoke to this woman, sorry, Brian, I spoke to this woman. I said, do you understand what Schneidman's failings is? No, she said. Do you know what the Werther effect is? No. Well, this woman is the... And then she's telling me that I got it wrong. And this woman is the head of child protection for Wales. Absolutely gobsmacking.
Incredible, isn't it? Now, there's been responses from the police, South Wales Police, so the information has definitely gone into the police. And we're going to say we've got policemen and women who are very, very interested and concerned of what's going on. And we've also got colleagues who are definitely not interested, which is going to be interesting for them when the truth comes out. We've got one sample reply from a Member of Parliament. A little bit of the sloped shoulder here because it's you should go away and tell somebody else. But there have been positive responses from MPs.
Oh yeah, huge, huge.
Yeah.
We've had loads QCs asking us to show the responses. And I've said to Jackie, no, I said, you keep that because that's our information. And we don't want to divulge.
Well, we also know people are being put under pressure as a result of talking about this. Now, this is a classic one here. We got a message from Madeline Moon MP for Bridgend, and what this lady says is just extraordinary and disgraceful. As you will have noted from my out-of-office response, it is parliamentary protocol that members do not address issues raised by other members' constituents. So it doesn't matter if people are dying. I can't deal with it because of a protocol. Hold on a second, let's just do this. I can, however, assure you that the partnership of agencies across Bridgend has as its first concern protecting our communities. And it's going on there, and to say from intrusion and harmful and unhelpful inaccuracies. What this lady is trying to say is that your research and the research that we've shown here is inaccurate.
Let's break this down. She's saying, first of all, about her partnership agencies. Well, her partnership agencies, the likes of Mind and Journeys, suicide help charities.
Who have failed in the first place, or worse than failed.
They're involved with the material. They're involved with the material. And then she says about intrusion and harmful and unhelpful accuracies. Well, is any of this information harmful or unhelpful or
that we're putting forward?
Well, that's fact. Nobody can argue with it. And this is what we're showing. So this woman, this Madeline Moon, who's in control of a community with lots of vulnerable children, a huge community, she's trying to stop us from protecting children.
Right.
We've shown the evidence.
50 seconds, we're going to end on this slide here. Here is another South Wales MP, Ms James, and this was the lady who was so concerned when we did a public talk on this terrible subject of the suicides amongst young children in South Wales that she assisted in a demonstration to actually try and bully and stop people coming into the meeting. What is she frightened of?
Well, she's
the
a
truth,
disgrace, isn't she?
The truth.
Yeah, well, you're saying that, but she's attacked you for exposing. I saw the after effects of your first interview, and as a result of it, I saw these people who were involved with putting out suicide material all of a sudden hiding and changing their websites as a result of your first talk. So this woman organised an attack on somebody who's trying to save the lives of children. Right. If we save one life by showing people what's going on, one child's life, isn't it worth everything? Is one child's life worth it?
And the other point is that the attack on these young children across the country, it doesn't matter what colour you are, it doesn't matter whether you're black, white, it doesn't matter whether you're Christian, Asian, Buddhist or anything else.
We're all human beings.
Yeah.
And we're all human beings and we're under attack. You've just got to understand the attack. If you look at something in isolation, like you said, you'll think, oh, that's odd. But when you start putting it together, and I only put it together because of the attacks these people are putting against me to deflect what they're doing. So once you start studying it, you'll realise that if you are black, Asian, Muslim, Christian, it doesn't matter what you are, we're all human beings, we're all under attack. And what we need to do is start to pull together and draw in our sustenance from the middle, from the left, from the right, from black, from Asian, from Chinese, from whites. We need to get to grips with this and put a stop to it. Take a leaf out of Albert Davis's MB example to us all. Be a man. Be a man and deal with it. Stand
up, be counted. Tim, we've got to end there. Thank you very much for coming into the studio today.
Welcome.
What a terrible subject. We have to get the lid off it. It's up to you guys out there who've watched this programme today. Thank you.